3, we are now going to move into types of glial cells. So we just talked about neurons. Those are those functional cells of the nervous system. They make up about 50% of the nervous system. Now we're going to look at the other 50%, which is made up of these glial cells. So that word is Glial. So the other word that we might see is neuroglia, however you want to say that. So when we're looking at our glial cells, we'll look at two different categories. We'll look at CNS glial cells and we'll look at PNS, so central nervous system glial cells and peripheral nervous system glial cells. And these glial cells are support cells, so they're we'll see their functions, but they have different supportive roles to help these neurons. All right. So for our CNS, I'll just write them up really quickly. Actually, I decided that I'm going to do these one by one. So an astrocyte, what is an astrocyte? This is the most abundant glial cell. So the most numerous. And these are going to connect a neuron to a blood vessel, specifically connect what this helps create is what we call the blood-brain barrier. So we don't want everything to be able to get into our brain, right? We don't want certain toxins, certain poisons going and affecting and damaging that super important control center that we have. So the astrocytes are going to sit there and regulate, they're going to anchor and regulate the exchange that's occurring between the neuron and the blood vessel. So it's going to help to regulate the chemical environment of the neuron. So the best way to do it is with a picture. So if I have a blood vessel, I got my blood vessel and then I have this astrocyte. I'm just making it look kind of strange. So that's an astrocyte. And then I have a neuron. So maybe I'll just put the cell body next to that. So the soma there. So this is an astrocyte. This is a neuron. And this is our blood vessel. So the astrocytes help to create the blood-brain barrier. As you can see, it's a barrier. It's blocking anything from the blood from entering the brain. So it's going to regulate that flow. What do we mean whenever we say it's regulating the chemical environment of the neuron? Well, if there's different chemicals, things like oxygen that needs to get to neurons and glucose that needs to get to neurons, it's going to bring those chemicals in and allow them to be in the brain. The brain is made up of a bunch of fat and a bunch of neurons, so whenever I draw this neuron, this is really supposed to represent the brain. Okay, sweet. So astrocytes, most abundant, creating this blood-brain barrier, preventing certain things from being able to interact with our brain tissue. We don't want toxins to be able to interact with our brain tissue. All right, so that's the first CNS one. Next, we have oligodendrocytes. So that word is oligodendrocyte. So our oligodendrocytes are our myelin-producing cells of the central nervous system. So if you remember when we talked about our anatomy of the neuron, whenever we looked at the axon, we said sometimes it has this lipid wrapper around it that's going to help increase the rate of conduction. So that's that myelin sheath. So the oligodendrocyte is producing this lipid, this myelin. And remember, this is the myelin-producing cell of the CNS. We have a different myelin-producing cell in our peripheral nervous system. Okay. Next one is microglia. So microglia are going to be phagocytic cells. So our Our immune cells, we haven't talked about those. That'll be next semester. But we have talked about some immune cells, things like macrophages, right? Macrophages can't cross this blood-brain barrier here produced by these astrocytes. So instead, we have different phagocytic cells called microglia that play an immune role. So these have an immune role and they're phagocytic. So they're doing phagocytosis, bringing things in through vesicles and destroying them. Cytosis. And the last one is the ependyma. Some people say ependyma, but it's ependyma. Ependyma. Alright, we'll talk about these a little bit more next unit, but right now we're just going to say that it forms the epithelial lining of these cavities of the brain and the canal of the spinal cord. So it's the epithelial lining of brain cavities. And the canal of the spinal cord. So if you look at the spinal cord itself, it's running down like this. Well, it has a canal in the center, just like we've seen these haversian canals and whatnot. This is another canal. This is the central canal of the spinal cord. Don't bring haversian canal into this thinking that it has anything to do with nerves. Haversian canals are in the center of bones. All I'm trying to say is we have another canal that we're looking at. We're looking at this canal of the spinal cord. And then in the brain, so the brain kind of looks like this. It's the cerebellum in the back. Within the brain, there's these cavities. These cavities are lined with these ependymal cells, and eventually these cavities link up and they form that central canal of the spinal cord. We'll see this. Don't even try to don't get too attached to this idea. We'll talk about this stuff more Unit 4. I just wanted to give you this idea of this canal of the spinal cord and then these brain cavities. So those are our four CNS glial cells, and now we need the peripheral nervous system glial cells. So one that you might be familiar with is called a Schwann cell. SCHWANN. So it's a Schwann cell. These Schwann cells are myelin-producing cells of our PNS. So we have oligodendrocytes and we have Schwann cells. And so we have Schwann cells, and then we also have satellite cells. So these are specific glial cells, and then both in the central and peripheral nervous system, obviously we have nerves. So you have the satellite cells. And these have an unknown function.